Hey, Kevin Pelton, ESPN NBA writer, back with another YouTube exclusive video. And today, going to take some of your questions from Twitter via a mailbag segment. Got a couple to highlight today. Let's start with @RiddickBo, who asked the question I think a lot of people are curious about after last week's win projection release. I know you got a lot of feedback regarding the win projection model, particularly where the Warriors ended up. They are projected on average for 42 wins. Any insight into your process for updating models and what drives those decisions? So, certainly there is an element of kind of the eye test or the laugh test and seeing, do those make sense for what I expected? And the Warriors one naturally doesn't. This is a team that, is coming off winning the championship. I do think I think there's a reasonable chance that they're not going to be as strong, particularly in the regular season, as last year when you consider that they're going to give more minutes to their young players this year. Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, James Wiseman, who's coming back from injury and wasn't part of the roster at all last season. And I wouldn't sleep on the loss of Gary Payton II and Otto Porter Jr., two of their top 7 players. Payton in particular was someone that stood out from adjusted plus minus standpoint. And since that's one of the factors that goes into the projections, that's one reason they didn't come out as high as you expect. I think another thing to remember is, I'm judging myself not necessarily on what other people expect, but also on the other projection systems that are out there. And we haven't seen a lot of other public projections yet, but I suspect they're also going to be much lower on the Warriors than general consensus. We saw this last season. 538's model in particular, I think started out with the Warriors at 37 wins, was kind of slow to adjust even when they exceeded those expectations and had them as underdogs against the Boston Celtics going into the NBA Finals. To some extent, I think that's just kind of inevitable as a product of the fact that we have these two Warriors seasons where, they weren't really competitive at this championship level. The one where, they were one of the league's worst teams in 2019-20 with injuries, then the year that they lost in the play-in tournament. Draymond Green in particular is someone who, his performance is going to be really variable depending on his effort level, which was different last season than we had seen the 2 years prior to that, particularly that 2019-20 season after Curry got hurt early. And a projection system is going to have a difficult time accounting for that, as well as, just kind of projecting how much development the Warriors' young guys have. I mean, there is an element where if those guys don't come along as we expect, Steve Kerr can cut their minutes over the course of the season. But when you're doing a projection, you can't kind of run through those different scenarios. It's just, in my case, one kind of average projection for how much they're going to play. I think the other thing when we're thinking about changes is I'm really trying to do the best job of projecting all 30 teams, not doing the best Warriors projection individually. So this is something that my colleague Aaron Schatz, who writes for us at ESPN Plus, has been doing it for a long time at Football Outsiders, has written about a lot in the past, that I don't want to do something that improves this funny looking projection if it hurts the projections for the other teams, because I got to worry about them as well. And I think that would be the case potentially with the Warriors, that if you made an adjustment for them, it'd potentially be an overfit that could hurt the overall accuracy of the model. I think the last thing I'd say is, look, I care a lot about the credibility of this. Last year, I was not comfortable with where my model was at. And that's why I didn't release win projections last season. Now, it's funny that a couple of the teams that I thought looked off to me, besides the Warriors, who were low last year as well, were the Lakers and Knicks, who ended up underperforming expectations pretty substantially. So sometimes you do have to listen to the model. And the last thing I'd say is I'm not going to evaluate it right now. I'm going to see what plays out this season and whether if the Warriors projection is way off, and there are things that we learn from that I can use to adjust in future seasons and make things look better. Make things perform better, testing them out of sample, which is kind of the gold standard here, then absolutely I'll make those changes. But right now, even with that, surprising projection, I was comfortable with the projections overall, and that's why we released them. All right, second question, final question today comes to us from Caleb at the NBA Facts, asking, is Alperen Sengun the second best passing center in the league? I think we can all agree Nikola Jokic, the best passing center in the league, but Sengun gave him a bit of a run for his money last season in terms of the highlight passes. Jokic is the only guy at that size on Sengun's level in terms of the creativity, and Sengun might even be sometimes even more audacious in the passes that he's willing to throw than Jokic, maybe because Jokic had sort of learned through trial and error over time as he's gotten deeper into his career and become a two-time MVP. I would say the third guy that has to be in this conversation is in terms of, a player who primarily plays center and presumably will almost full-time this season is Domantas Sabonis. Maybe not the same level of, again, audacity and creativity that we see from Sengun and Jokic, but in terms of just facilitating, making plays on a consistent basis, he was number 2 in terms of full-time centers and assist rate last season behind Jokic. Sengun lagged a little bit behind the two of them. So I would still probably say Sabonis is my number 2 right now in terms of passing centers, but Sengun is very early in his career. As he continues to develop, he's got a chance to put himself in that position, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do coming into the season, presumably as the starting center for Houston with the Christian Wood trade. And there's no bigger Sengun believer certainly than me, after where my statistical model had him pegged as the top prospect going into the 2021 NBA draft. So looking forward to that for sure. With that, thanks, and keep those questions coming. Hashtag Pelton Mailbag, or you can email me if that's easier. If it's a longer question, peltonmailbag@gmail.com. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more YouTube exclusive videos.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.